Okay, and we're now recording. Hello, Tony. Welcome to the podcast.
Hello, Rob. Thanks so much for having me.
How's the weather in Glasgow?
As always, it's cold and raining and dreek, but yep, I'm pretty used to that by now.
Okay, and so just to help tune into the main idea of this particular interview I wanted to do, in a moment I want to get on to, in particular, your ideas about high value or major gifts fundraising. But just to kind of set the scene a bit, although you and I first met about 6 years ago when you were at EMMS International, 2 or 3 months ago you made a job change and you're now at Fields of Life. Do you want to tell me a bit about the charity you work in now?
Yeah. I just 3 months ago, I moved across to an organisation called Fields of Life. They're a Christian international development organisation focusing on education and on water in Uganda, Rwanda, and I'm actually tomorrow flying out to Uganda to see the projects for the first time. So I'm really excited.
Wow, that's going to be some trip. So how long are you going for?
It's not too long a trip, for 2 weeks, but plenty of travel in and around the project. So it should be a busy couple of weeks for me.
And this time, are you going with donors, or this time you're just going to focus and learn for your own sake?
Yeah, it's primarily just to learn to meet the team out in East Africa. There is a donor coming out for a couple of days who has been a donor for a number of years. So I will have a couple of days with donor, but primarily it's more for my induction and really get to know everybody.
Okay. Gosh, so there must be so much to learn still as you're getting your feet under the desk in the new job. But if I may, I'd like to get to the main focus of why I wanted to interview you, which was this fabulous, both in terms of the numbers growth I observed you achieving when you were the major donor fundraiser at EMMS International. And just before we ease into that, it was about 6 years ago you joined there. What kind of organisation is EMMS International? And paint a picture of the journey you made from about 2013 up until just recently.
Okay. Well, I guess the first thing to say was when I moved across to EMMS International, which is another international development organisation working particularly in healthcare. But when I joined that organisation in 2013, I had no fundraising experience at all. So I was coming in from more of a sales background. I'd worked as a sales manager for a couple of years, and I'd worked as a recruitment consultant for a short time as well. And so it was really quite a new thing for me. I came in as relationship manager. Really, probably other ways of describing it might be major donor fundraiser, but there wasn't really anything there at that point. The charity had been there for a long time. It's actually 175 years, a long time. So there was a database of people there, and there were quite a lot of small gifts coming into the organization, but there wasn't much of a focus on any major giving. So coming into that was really exciting for me. It gave me a chance to explore, identify who the people that we want to target might be, and really take ownership of it and grow it. And I've been really blessed, and I'm really thankful because over the 6 years that I worked at EMMS International, we grew income from major gifts quite steadily. So in the first year of over 250,000 from standstill, and then the second year up to 300,000. And by the time I was leaving, we just received a 7-figure gift, and income was almost up to 2 million for that year. The year before that, almost 1 million. So, it was really quite an exciting trajectory, and there wasn't anything particularly magical about any of it. It was just, I guess, just having that focus and having that clarity.
Yeah. And you and I first met very early in that journey when you came onto the Major Gifts Mastery Program that we do at Bright Spot, and my colleague Kim started coaching you then, and
That's
I
right.
appreciated her wisdom and support for a lot of this journey. And right early on, I was struck by not just how you're sort of willing to get on and do stuff you are, which is always one of the most important qualities I see in a fundraiser. Not overthink and not over theorize, but doing has a great power to it. But also paradoxically, I saw you as you tend to pause and think about stuff and ask some smart questions, and I see that thoughtfulness may well be one of the qualities. Well, I observed it in you then, and I wonder also if that might have been a factor in this steady upward curve, because each donor you met or each year you went through, you'd be willing to look at things and not always be satisfied, but look at what else can we do. So in a moment, I'd love to explore with you some other things you think to have helped this growth to achieve. But first of all, I wondered what you think about that compliment I'm paying to you about not only action taking, but also a reflective quality and a thoughtfulness.
I wonder if because I came into fundraising cold, or if because I came from not a fundraising background, if I was almost a bit of a sponge in that sense and really hungry to figure out what is it that made a good fundraiser. And I remember joining your mastery program back in 2013 and just, sucking all that information in, trying to understand what it is that set apart the good fundraisers from the not so good ones. And as you say, Kim Van Neerkerk as well, just, her coaching me and really asking questions. What about this? What about that? And I was really keen to hear from people who had been successful with some of the bigger gifts. But definitely, if there's one thing that stands out to me through listening to what you've been talking about, listening to others, is that sense of pausing, that sense of stopping, and not being busy all the time. And what I mean by not being busy is I'm not saying not to work hard, but to work hard doing the right things, not working hard doing the things that maybe need done, but are, going to just take up the time. So I've always been a big picture person anyway. So that's very much looking, okay, so if my target is this, how am I going to get there? That's really what I want to be focusing on. But yes, I guess that sense of that hunger to always learn, to always be someone who can learn, and to always have that humility and know that you don't have all the answers. And I know there's still so much more that I will have to learn. So yeah, I guess that would be what I would say.
Yeah, thank you. And clearly this being willing to pause and calmly see the big picture and work out what ideas that might give us for improvement, that's part of it. But I think you and I spoke a couple of months ago. I just had a little quick catch up to find out how you were doing, and you were saying also across these 6 years you've got better at applying that same, let's just pause and think calmly, that habit to particular donor relationships and opportunities. And I've forgotten the gist of it, but you told me an example or two of particular big gifts that came about precisely because you were able to pause and see the wood for the trees and then take it into better action. I wonder if you could remind me of one of those examples.
Yeah, so I mean, it has been something that again and again that I keep coming back to. And I remember in 2014, I had this big target ahead of me. We'd started from scratch halfway through the year before, and there was this £250,000 target that I'd given myself to try and achieve. And I thought, how on earth am I going to do this? And we were so busy. There was a Christmas appeal coming out. There was all sorts of things that were happening. And I was just, my diary was absolutely filled. And I just felt like I just need to just stop and I need to kind of focus on how am I going to hit this figure? How am I going to get to where I need to be? And I remember because I went out for a bike ride and just to clear my head, and I was riding up the canal in Glasgow, and I remember just thinking to myself, where is the money most likely to come from? And it was obvious it's from this individual that I'd been speaking with for a while. Like that's where it's most likely to come from. I need to put my time into that. And I remember I got off my bike, I picked up my phone and I texted him and I said, would you like to go to Malawi with me? And I thought about it. Made it just the way I wanted it to be, and I pressed send. And I remember within 5 minutes he wrote back saying, absolutely, when can we book our flights? And we went out about a month later, and we spent 2 weeks together looking at the projects. We came back, and I then asked him for, I think it was £200,000 over a cup of coffee, which was one of the most scariest things I had ever done at that stage. And he then, a couple of weeks later, then came back to me and he gave over £100,000. But I remember that really clearly just because, it was a lot more fun to go on the trip to Malawi, but also it was just working a lot smarter. And I could have been way busier doing a lot of other things that would have brought a fraction of the money that would have brought in. But just having that time to stop and reflect and think, where is the most likely place this money is going to come from? And then spend your time figuring out what's the strategy with that particular donor or that particular idea.
Yes, what a great story, and a good reminder to all of us, busy as we get doing stuff. And I know that we've mentioned a couple of times, our colleague Kim van Neerkerk, she's a big fan of mindfulness as a quality anyway, and a habit and a practice that can increase one's ability to see the wood for the trees, to think more clearly about what's really important. And I also know that different people I've interviewed over the years have different ways of getting better at that quality. And I know for Kim, daily meditation is a key element of how she's got so much better at it. But for you, is it going for a bike ride is achieves a similar quality?
Yeah, I mean, I always laugh with Kim because maybe I'm not the kind of person that jumps at meditation, but I definitely see the value in just that time of stopping, of reflecting, of praying, of meditating, whatever it is that you do, and just having that opportunity to really think big picture, to be able to think even just to stop worrying about things and stop over analyzing things. There's definitely value in that. And definitely before big major donor meetings or big presentations that I'm giving, I do like to try and have a little pause to just calm myself, calm my nerves, and almost remember that actually this is a two-way conversation, and that I'm there to listen, and I'm there to really find out as much as I can, rather than necessarily just talk at somebody. So I found it useful.
And you probably remember, across our 6-month Major Gifts Mastery Program, on day 2 and day 3 and day 4, we give everyone a chance to reflect on something that they've done differently since last time. And by day 3, usually the most common breakthrough people are talking about, that they're really pleased about and they're noticing it's helping their results, is that thing that you've just said, that the confidence when with a donor or supporter to not feel the need to do all the talking, but to pause and allow and create space for the other person to do more talking. It sounds like it should be really easy, but I remember early in my career when more nervous and less confident, I filled that space. I noticed that the more people deliberately practice some of the habits and techniques for what you do when you're with a donor, the better they get at just being present and allowing the space for the other person to talk. And again, a couple of months ago, when you and I talked, that you said that is one of the things you've noticed you're much better at now than you were 6 years ago. And again, I might be imagining this, but I thought that you had an example or two. I mean, the truth is, every supporter you meet now, that's going to be at play. But I wonder if, for the listener's point of view, there's an example that springs to mind of when you've noticed that helping.
I mean, honestly, I'd have to agree with you 100%. That I think that with, more than anything else, it's probably the one habit that is going to be the most influential, more than anything else. A really good example is a new person who I had met, probably 2015, 16. And this person have that first conversation with, and almost always you get asked, what is it that you're here for? So I tend to try and have a phrase that I use, which might be something like, well, there are so many things that I'd love to talk to you about, but before I delve in, I'd love to hear just a little bit more about you. And so I just started to ask him about him, and it turned out that the charitable trust that he was operating from gave to a particular type of individual. He had a particular heart for accommodation for people. And as I uncovered that and asked, well, what is it about that? And how, how did that come about? And, as he began to talk, and it was a good, 2-hour conversation of listening to him, it became very crystal clear that there was one project that we had at EMMS International that just fitted absolutely perfectly. And so when it came to my time to speak, it was another accommodation project. I knew that was the one to go with. Now, if I'd kind of rewritten that and I'd said, okay, I'm going to come into this meeting totally planned, I knew exactly what I was going to say, maybe I'd be focusing on a completely different project. But because I focused on the project that, after listening to him, understanding what he was interested in, it was an amazing match. And that relationship blossomed, and he was one of our biggest major donors in the end. But it really just came from that sense of really genuinely finding out about that person, not as I'm going to listen for listening's sake, but genuinely finding out what are you actually passionate about, and is there anything in my organization that matches that? I think somebody once described it to me as a fundraiser as a matchmaker. But from that point of view, I guess, it's not just as simple as listening. You also have to know your projects inside out, because you've got to do the study and understand all the different elements of your projects, and if there are different segments of a project that you can then bring into conversation, and then you have to have maybe a case study in your head that would match that particular element of a project. So there definitely is a lot of work to go behind the scenes, but I guess it's less planning for that meeting, and being open to their, what are they passionate about, and seeing how can that match.
Yeah. So there's several things in there, Tony, thank you. Part of it is just a better plan for how you might answer their question where they're trying to get you to do the talking.
Yes.
And a phrase that would kind of, you can congruently give back to them to help them see the value in opening up to you. And obviously that's one of the key modules we include in our training. But I think the more important thing, which many fundraisers learn at some point in their career, it's just, if the listeners can get better at it even quicker, then that'll help. The more important thing, I think, is just to value curiosity in and of itself, rather than feel, though the pressure at some level is on, rather than feel like you're doing a sale or doing a technique on someone. In and of itself, to just care and be curious, that's a value which I sense you prize more highly than maybe the Tony of 6 or 7 years ago might have known to.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I probably would have been more prone to jump in and tell you about what we do and how it's different from others, and just actually probably the confidence has grown that if you give someone the opportunity to speak, they will give you the opportunity back. I've never ever found that they haven't given me the opportunity to speak. Well, before I would have felt like, oh no, time's running out, I need to say my bit. and this person just keeps talking. But if you genuinely just don't worry about that and put that to one side and just listen and ask a lot of deep, deep questions. I remember one example, and this was the donor who gave a 7-figure gift. And in our organization, it was kind of decided, look, I think us and this donor might go separate ways because we're on a different paths. And I remember saying, okay, let's go and properly listen to him. And I remember just asking him question after question about why he was interested in a particular area of our work or of the work that he was doing. And 3 hours into that conversation, he then asked me about what we're doing. 3 hours into the conversation. And so you will get the opportunity, but if you really take the time to listen, then you will eventually get your chance to actually speak. And by that stage, you know exactly what you need to say.
I think all of this is absolutely wise stuff, and I've observed it work over and over again for the people who I've met and who come through our courses. And one of the questions people sometimes ask is, yes, Tony, but what if they don't want to share more freely? If the listener is thinking of their donor who's never given them 1 hour, let alone 3,
I know,
and who is more introverted or shy or private, when you're trying to better understand and appreciate their world, as the way I phrase it in my book. When you're trying to do that first, maybe there's no one perfect answer. But do you have any tips for things that have helped for when people are initially less forthcoming?
Undoubtedly some people, they just are more private and they are not going to open up. And so it's something that's hard to describe, but there is that soft relationships, skills that most fundraisers have, that they just tend to kind of get the hint whenever they need to hurry up or whatever. So, obviously you don't just keep asking questions. If you're walking into a businessman's office and he's got half an hour and you're just asking him, how was your day? And what are you interested in? He's going to get pretty annoyed pretty quick. So I guess it's just reading the room, reading their body language, reading them and understanding, okay, when is it appropriate to ask and when is it not? I'd say as a rule of thumb, most people do like talking about what they're passionate about. So, try and speak about what they're passionate about, not what you're passionate about. But also, I guess if someone's not willing to give you the time to properly talk with them, then the likelihood of them giving you a 6-figure gift is probably fairly slim as well. That's what I found, that I've very rarely received major gifts from anybody who wasn't. And so not to be overly anxious about those moments, and just to keep plugging away at the ones where you can get that kind of conversation in, because there's no point in working at something that they're clearly not that interested. So I guess, I don't know if that's helpful or not, but
absolutely it is. And it reminds me of another thing. When I've interviewed you in the past, you said across these years, this is my phrase actually, but I hope you'll understand the concept and agree with me on the concept. Across these years, you've got better at noticing the patterns of when someone is likely the kind of person who would absolutely care and match for what your charity is doing, and or have the ability to want to make a difference. In the last couple of years, you've been much better at noticing those signals than you were earlier. In fact, I think you even told me a particular story of a colleague coming back from some kind of event, networking event, and they mentioned a donor, and the lights went on in your brain that you couldn't allow this one to wait to the end of the pile for 3 weeks' time. Tell me about what you've learned about pattern recognition and decisiveness when the green light is flashing for you.
I think that and probably many who listen to this who or have been fundraisers for a period of time, you do get a sense for when, oh, that looks like we need to put time and effort into that, because it's really looking like it has the certain characteristics of a gift that maybe you've had in the past. It's quite hard to put a finger on it sometimes, but there is definitely certain things that really stand out, and that example that you talk about is a really good one, because so colleagues have been sitting on that lead for a number of months. So I didn't hear about it until a couple of months after. So someone had been in a networking event, they'd spoken with somebody, the charitable trust was looking for something around this type of work. And when they told me about this, I thought there's something unusual about that. The way they're telling you so much information up front, the fact that they're in a little bit of trouble and they're looking for someone really to guide them and give them that sense of direction. The fact that they approached you with that information and not that you sought it out. And so, I remember saying, I will absolutely take this on. And I phoned the person straight away, and they led me, they put me a referral into the chairman of the trust, and the trust was in Shrewsbury. So if you look at Shrewsbury on the map and Glasgow on the map, it wasn't exactly easy to get to. It took me 4 hours to get there. I had a half-hour meeting, and I had 4 hours back. So it was really, quite a just something I had a sense of.
I may have got the timing slightly wrong, but it wasn't even just that it was a major investment in time and effort and money on your part. It was also, you had to jump quite quick.
Very quick, yeah. So I within a week, I'd planned that trip. I went down and met that person, then had to put a full proposal together within a month after that, which my programs director was delighted with, as you can imagine. But that led to £500,000. So, it was fast to begin with, and if we hadn't got it in there fast, we would have absolutely missed it. Now, it's not to say that will always happen, but it's just the sense that there are certain things that stand out as you become more experienced, I guess, as a fundraiser, that you say, okay, that's something I need to move on quickly.
Yes, and the other thing I'm hearing in that is a philosophy and a belief that our job is not to go and get money to pay for our charity to do some good work. Our job is to understand who out there cares and might have problems to solve in areas similar to ours, and to look, which donor could I be helping today? Which trust is trying to solve a problem? And I sense part of what made you act so urgently was them requesting help solving a problem, rather than, oh, here's an opportunity for me to get some money. Yeah. Is that a fair analysis?
It definitely, and actually, I think that fundraising gets a bad rap maybe sometimes for always appearing to just be going out and trying to seek money, and I think that what we have to offer people is so much greater, but it's that belief that, look, they want to do something good in the world, and I have a solution for that, because what we're doing is exceptional. And I guess it comes back to that matchmaking analogy, where I'm not trying to sell something to anybody. I'm literally just trying to see what are the things that you're wanting to do, and is there anything that we're doing that matches with that, and just having the confidence and the belief that we can add value to that, and we can fulfill some of those passions and those dreams that supporters have. And every single supporter that I work with is really satisfied, and is really often saying it's the most amazing thing I have ever done in my life. And these are people who have had businesses that they've sold for 20 and 30 million pounds. They've had families, and you're thinking, how could you be saying that? But they're saying, look, this is one of the most fulfilling things I've ever done, because I'm helping 50,000 poor and vulnerable people, and thank you for giving me the opportunity. So it's a completely different mind shift.
It is, and it's part of the challenge of this is early in your career, you may not yet have met many people who are that unequivocally glowing about it. So going in for your early asks, an extra thing that makes it harder is your experience of life is that if someone's given away losing or giving away £50,000 of their own money, they may be feeling poorer, literally and emotionally poorer. Whereas once you've been doing this a while, you notice how truly it satisfies their human needs to contribute and how great that feels. And that also has a side benefit that all your future relationships with donors and asks and offers to donors are easier because you know you're offering them something great rather than taking something away from them. So and certainly on our course, we help people get over those emotional hang-ups about the ask by just tuning into the examples in their own life that giving is good for people. Giving is good for me, giving is good for you, and it's also good for someone who's quite a lot richer than us. So focusing on the fact that the act of giving a tool makes the giver happier, not sadder, usually helps with that. But I don't know what other tips you would have to help someone speed up that confidence that I'm not taking, I'm enriching someone's life if I help them want to.
Well, I do wonder sometimes if we sometimes feel like we're asking for the money, and you know that just that really complicates things. If you think I'm asking you to give 50,000 to me, then absolutely, I'd have a lot of problems with that. But you're not, you know, and I think if you genuinely have the integrity where you're saying, actually, I believe in this organization, and I wish I had 100 grand that I could give to this because it is amazing, and having that kind of passion and integrity that this is something that if I had the money, I would do this as well. And I think it's just saying, okay, look, you're here, and you know, this organization's over here. You should have a look at what this organization is doing because it's truly exceptional. And just, I guess, moving towards that. But yeah, it's definitely something that helps.
Yeah, and there's so many elements to this, and the first big strong one I think is to just to understand the fundamental truth that giving is good for people. So if you help someone give more to something they care about, they are going to be emotionally up on the deal rather than down on it. I think that is a big first bit of it. But another bit of it is, I agree, the confidence in the amazing, you know, difference your project makes, and that helps you be off the fence. It helps you be more bold and confident in the way you talk about it. And you know, I just noticed the language you used there about something being truly exceptional. That's different from early in my career when I might have said, I really think you should visit this project. You know, it's making a difference. And a choice of language, the bolder words, which you can justify, but B, your tone of voice, all of that comes from what you believe about whether donors gain or not, and what you believe about whether this project makes a big difference. And obviously, that's one of the reasons your organization is smart, to allow you tomorrow to fly out and fill up with that conviction.
That's it. You know, you have to work on your passion. And I think if you're sitting behind your desk all day, every day, and you're just looking at your emails and you're not actually embedding yourself in the organization that you're working in, I think it's going to be hard to really believe that and have that passion. And I think that what I mean by working in that passion is, you know, take the time to go out. It's not wasted time. You know, it's very valuable just to go out and see the projects, to meet the people that are being impacted, to see the difference. You know, even if it's a university where you're seeing, okay, what are the research projects that are going on? How is that having a difference in the world? You know, environmental projects, whatever it might be, whatever the cause of the charity is, there will be things in there that are going to bring passion about, and it's just really locking into those, and you know, even giving what you can towards it as well, and experiencing that from the side of from a donor's perspective is also, I think, quite key.
Oh, yeah, that's a really interesting idea. So given that the listener's salary may be considerably less than what they might earn in a commercial sector for some equivalent type of skills. So they're not feeling super wealthy, but nevertheless, you're observing, even if they could just give a one-off donation or £5 a month to their charity, in addition to the difference that makes, you're saying that can have a knock-on effect on your own, feelings and confidence as a fundraiser to stand by your product. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, I would never ever advise a director to say to their staff, you must give to our organization or anything like that. But just having that sense of, okay, well, I'm also giving to this. I don't know. For me, it kind of, although I would never say it, it gives me the confidence that, well, I believe in this enough to give to it. So if I'm going to ask you, Rob, to give to it, maybe I'm not a hypocrite, but am I being true to myself if I'm not willing to also give? And if not, why not? Could be a fair question that you could ask me.
Yeah, and apart from anything else, if you do that, give that one-off gift, or try for 3 months giving two or £5 or £10 a month, it can be a really interesting experiment to see what kind of thank you letters you get.
Yeah.
Do you get a thank you call? So as some level of mystery shopper to experience what is this service like, probably is going to be fascinating, isn't it?
It is, and actually what can be really interesting as well is if you're married, you can put it in your partner's name, because you can always just try and see what it's like from their point of view and ask them, how did you feel when you received that, and just get their feedback, because sometimes being so close to the organization, it's really hard to move yourself away, but your partner has the ability to see that, and also probably knows you well enough that they can maybe speak a few truths that might, the everyday person may not be willing to tell you. So it can be quite a useful trick as well.
Yeah, wise words. Certainly worth someone having a think about whether they might like to try that. I've got another question, because I've got a memory of, I think this was probably day 2 or day 3 of that very first program you came on with me.
Okay.
At the point in the day when people had a chance to share something they'd done differently, or some victory. I remember you telling a really interesting story, and please fill in the details, but the gist of it was meeting a donor who was potentially curious. So let's say £50,000, £75,000 they could invest.
Yep.
And they asked you to put together 2 or 3 proposals. And for whatever reason, you chose not to send them a 17-page wordy document, but you thought it would be better if you could send them some really short, crudely put together smartphone films.
That's right. Yeah.
That story. Could you remind us of the story? Because nowadays more fundraisers are getting with it and doing films instead of proposals. But remind us of that story, and then B, your view nowadays. Do you still make use of film in your fundraising practice?
So yes, that was a lot of fun. Again, I think it will come back to your donor, so it's knowing your donor. But that particular donor, I know that he was not one who really wanted to read very lengthy documents. And so I felt that, okay, what if I just give him a 2-pager? It's a very, a picture of what the project is, a description of, very high level, this is what this project's setting out to do. And then I actually reached out to staff overseas. So I had one project in Malawi, one project in India, one project in Nepal, and I reached out to our partners over there in the countries where we're working, and asked them to put together a 30-second video of what they're doing, what it's all about, and thank you for your interest. And what came back from one of them was just like, wow, that was unbelievably inspiring. One of them came back was so dull, and I had to go back and say, look, maybe a few more, not just you talking at the camera, maybe show us somewhere where you're working in one of the hospitals. But that for him was really good. And actually what I loved about it was because it wasn't fancy, it wasn't glamorous. Someone just picked up a phone, but they were able to personalize that. So they're able to say, hey Rob, thanks so much for showing an interest in what we're doing. And here's a director of a hospital taking the time to speak to this individual about who they are and what they're about. So that was quite exciting. And he then, in turn, said, okay, look, I'd like to give a £50,000 donation between these two projects. But and yes, in the second part of your question, I use it all the time now. So I love to try and have videos, and I don't like the polished, fancy videos. I really prefer that more personalized, I guess, rough and ready type videos.
Yeah, and literally, when you fly out tomorrow, you're going to take a smartphone with you. You're not going to take a fancy, expensive camera. Your tool of choice is a smartphone, and then some cheap or free editing software on your smartphone, and then sometimes you might get a professional editor to do some things, but the key thing is you're not doing it with a big budget.
No, and I work for small organization or medium-sized organization. I have done in the past with EMMS International as well. So don't have the massive budgets for big fancy films, and so from that perspective, it suits that as well. But actually, I think it actually is better as well, because you, as I say, it's got that more rough and ready, real feel. For the donor's point of view, this is genuine, this is real. They probably don't want me to spend hours working on a fancy video for them. They might feel that's a bit unnecessary use of public or charity money. And so it really does kind of play into that as well. It doesn't cost us a lot of money. It doesn't take a lot of time. And it just adds so much more, I think, than a lengthy document.
So, Tony, a couple of minutes ago, you said obviously step one is understand the donor, and some trusts and donors and companies are going to want lots of stuff written down in more detail. But I sense that in the last few years, much more often, if a supporter asks you to put together a proposal, the amount of written words you send them has got shorter and is more likely to be 1, 2, or 3 pages than it would have been 6 years ago. And the number of times you include a supporting smartphone film to bring it to life has increased. And A, have I guessed that correctly? And B, have you got a couple of, obviously on our Bright Spot Members Club, we've got a little training module that Nikki Bell put together for us, because she's great at this stuff, where she offers some tips. But from your own practice, if someone's thinking, I really must do more of that, but I don't know where to start, or I'm a bit nervous about X or Y, top of your head, a couple of tips that might help someone get going and do this more successfully?
I guess it's to keep it lighthearted. If you're going to do a film like that, it's to keep it personalized. Address the person by name. Or if you're wanting to do multiple people, you can do different takes. But keeping that personal bit's really, really key. But also just making it more storytelling as well. And don't forget that the same rules apply then to other fundraising type work. So, you want, if you're interviewing somebody, you want them to tell a story, not to just talk at the camera. And for me, it's trying to take away the cringe value a little bit that can sometimes creep in there. Just making it probably a little bit more matter of fact, and say, look, this is what we're doing. This is what we're all about. Thank you so much for showing interest. Kind of keeping it that kind of high level. For the more detailed things, probably best to keep them to a document, and your donor can read them if they choose to, but maybe not keep those in the video, because that kind of defeats the purpose of it. That'll be my take on it.
Yeah, fantastic top tips. And from learning from Nikki Bell, it seems to be that the skills themselves really are not that hard, and lots of people are using similar skills the way they use their phone in their home life. It's as much about a belief and a confidence that it's appropriate to use your smartphone in this way when you're doing your work. There's slightly, if I may, slightly different kind of question now, Tony, because as you know, for the last couple of years, we've had an online portal where people can learn fundraising skills, get inspired, get stories like these, and it's called Bright Spot Members Club. And you've been a member since pretty early on, I think, for a year or two. And if the listeners are wondering about that, what's been your experience of that? You're still a member now. Why did you join? Why have you kept going with it? What's been so helpful for you about the club there?
Yeah, I mean, I found it really interesting and really, really encouraging for me. I guess the main thing that I really enjoy about having a portal is that sometimes when you go to these fundraising conferences, you get given some really gold nuggets of information, maybe some really amazing stuff, but for you at that moment, it just wasn't relevant. And so for me, that's quite a key thing for me, that I like things that are relevant to me right now. So just recently, my chief executive asked me to have a look at the kind of some of the thank you letters that were going out from the organization. And so I jumped on the portal and I saw some really great interviews with, I can't remember who it was with, but it was, really, really useful.
Who's an expert?
Yes, that was it.
The thanking process and thanking creativity. Yeah.
Yes. And it was just gold, but to have it at the time I needed it, rather than, wanting to, go along to a conference where I might have had that information, but I wasn't using it right there and then, so it wasn't useful to me. Also then, from a cost point of view, up in Glasgow, there are some great events that are happening more and more, I guess, but often it's down to London. So for me to then travel all the way down to London, then to go to a conference, which some things may be useful and some things may not be, can really add up in terms of amounts of money. So just being able just to jump on my computer and kind of look up a video, but probably similar to the coaching with Kim that I've done. It's for me, having things that are relevant to me right now and being able to look at videos of that, or being able to speak to somebody about a particular issue, that for me is much better than going along to the bigger conferences.
Yeah. And certainly a lot of the driving force for why I set it up is I know that success in fundraising, as success in life, is more of a marathon than it is a sprint. It's not about what you do on one given day or one particular inspiring course. To get these kinds of uplift in numbers, it's a long old haul. And we wanted to create something that would support you across that journey, rather than hope that you'd remember where your notes were from 7 months ago. So I'm so pleased it's working out for you in that way. So of course it's a slightly different way of arranging your training, rather than just, I'll just go on the course or the conference tomorrow. So it takes a slight mindset shift, I guess. But our 250 members have made that shift. But if someone's watching this and they're curious as to what they would say to their finance director, or is it worth justifying that? What would be your short message as to whether it might be worth exploring?
If talking to your finance team, I mean, I think it's worth comparing it to the cost, but not to forget the cost of flying to where you need to go to, or taking the train to where you need to go to for a conference or whatever it might be, and just show that comparison. But then also beyond that, because often you'll want to do both, it's just saying, look, there are things that are coming up in my day-to-day business where I really need advice from someone who's actually been there and done that. There's nobody in my organization that's had experience of X or Y, but having a place where I can go to and find that little nugget of information, advice from someone who's been there, done that, maybe made the mistakes that I now won't make because I've now watched this, will really help somebody. So I think from that point of view, it will pay off, much more than what it would cost.
Fantastic, thank you. And Tony, just before we finish, I often just ask some more rapid fire style questions.
Sure.
If you've got a few more minutes, I'll just jump in, and some of your answers might be similar to something you've said before, or maybe it's a bit different, whatever comes into your head. idea one. In the last 5 years, Tony, has there been a new belief or habit or behavior that has most helped you in your job?
I would say the habit of stopping and pausing and really thinking about what I need to do to hit the budgets that I need to hit, to work smart, not hard, although preferably work both, but figuring out, okay, what is it that I need to do that will increase income rather than just, keeping my diary very busy. So yeah, just that stopping and reflecting and pausing.
Next question. If, metaphorically speaking, you could have a giant billboard which all fundraisers or charities would see, what might it say and why? Could be a few words, could be a quote,
That's a great,
short paragraph, quote from someone, whatever you like.
that's a great question. I think for me, it would be failure is your friend. And the reason I say that is because I think so often we think failure is the opposite to success. But for me, success needs failure. And once you have that little mind shift as to why failure is needed, it makes you less afraid to make mistakes. And it maybe makes you less afraid to try new things or put yourself out there in a way that you haven't before. So for me, probably failure is your friend.
Love that. Thank you. And I know that I'm a big fan of getting better at stuff because I read a lot. Some people learn in different ways. I don't know how you are on this one, but does there happen to be a book that you've found especially interesting or helpful to your thinking in your career over the last 6-7 years?
It was a book I read, I started to read many years ago, but I keep picking it back up, which is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one particular area, which is on time management. And just, I've got 4 kids. I've got a busy job. I just finished an MBA. It was just been busy. But that's really helped me keep my focus on the things that matter most to me, which are my family, my friends, and keeping my sanity. But yeah, that for me, that book is really amazing book. That is very values based. And gets you back to what is important to, what's important in life.
Yeah, I remember that the later chapters really bring home that values piece, and I also, there's a pattern developing. I'm understanding much of your success, Tony, can be attributed to this theme you've been talking about, which is do the important stuff, not just the urgent stuff.
Yes.
Chapter 3, isn't it, of the 7 Habits book? It's that we read that book, it really helps you tune into not just be busy, not what is screaming loudest, but to pause earlier in the day and be thoughtful as to what is most important to help me get me to where I want to go.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've reminded me of a chapter I need to reread right now in my life. Thank you. Next question. What failure or seeming failure in a way helped set you up for a later success?
There's probably too many. But no, I imagine the biggest for me was before. So I mentioned before that I had had a brief stint as a recruitment consultant, and it didn't go as well as I hoped. So it was the one kind of time in my life I'd had my daughter was born that year. And life just got the better of me, and I didn't quite do the business development piece, and I didn't do it well enough that 6 months down the line from that, I really suffered and didn't have the pipeline there, and ended up, having a mutual agreement to leave kind of that organization. But it was a kind of a humbling moment for me, but it was very much set in stone that any time now that my pipeline is at the early stages is starting to dwindle at all, I get that fear within me, but like a healthy fear, where I'm like, I need to work, I need to get out there, I need to meet more people. My meetings every week have to be at a certain level. I just don't allow myself to dwindle in that. But for me, that was a big failure, but also such gold for the success that I've had.
So wise words. If the listeners in high value fundraising need an extra impetus to think about, can I somehow solve the problems of how to get some more of our potential supporters or existing supporters to come to our event or to meet us for a quick informal cup of coffee, and how can I creatively, sometimes bravely, solve that? Next question, similar in a way, but in case there's a different answer, what advice would you give to a smart, determined person who's just entered the fundraising profession?
Ooh, I think for someone who's just entered the fundraising profession, it's to, I guess, be that sponge to listen to others who have made the mistakes before you, to have that very humble, I guess, way of approaching things and say, look, what can I learn? Never think that you know better, and just always have that kind of learnable, approachable, teachable character.
Fantastic. And there's various bits of advice which are often broadly right, but they can be misinterpreted, I think. Is there a piece of advice that you sometimes hear people saying which they should ignore, or they should be careful about just kind of following because it can be misunderstood?
Quite often I hear negative things said about the state of affairs, which are true. But for example, Brexit, for example, people just don't want to hear what I have to say. You're annoying people, you're pestering people. And what I've learned over the years, and Kim has very wisely led me away from, is that these are assumptions, and we need to be clear. Our heads need to be clear of those assumptions. And yes, Brexit will be really affecting some people, but it won't be affecting everybody. And yes, some people might find it a pest, but actually you might be adding value to somebody else. And so just to clear your assumptions and not believe a lot of the lies that you hear, that, oh, everything's doom and gloom, everything's, I'm a pest to everybody, and really challenge those assumptions within yourself.
Really helpful, thank you. And finally, I've always seen you as a positive person, a can-do kind of a person who brings a certain energy to training days and to fundraising. But assuming that you're just as mortal as the rest of us, and you sometimes have tough days, setbacks, what do you tend to do to handle stress, to become more resilient, to bounce back when those days happen to you?
Yeah, I mean, look, you can't do fundraising without having a lot of rejection and a lot of days where things just don't go your way. So, for me, for me personally, it's exercise. So for me, it's getting out and having a run, bike ride. I cycle to work, so it's just, I'll take all my anger and frustration out on my bike, which is probably good for the kids when I get home as well. But it's just that sense of, for me, just having that outlet and having that place to put my frustration and that stress, and also just to remember to have that big picture, just to remember that that failure is your friend, and that you will, it's not the end of the world. But yeah, that definitely helps me, is to get out and get on the bike and pedal fast.
Keep going. Great. So, Tony, so many helpful stories, bits of wise advice. I really appreciate the time you've taken to bring some of these lessons you've learned to life for us in this way. So we need to finish fairly soon, because you've got a pack ready for tomorrow, apart from anything else. Yeah. But if people want to get in touch, are you on LinkedIn or are you on Twitter? How might some people send you a question or send you some feedback?
Yeah, I'm useless in the world of Twitter. I think I do have an account, but I never use it. But yes, LinkedIn, you can get in contact with me there. Yeah, sure. And yeah, I'm always happy to hear from anybody. I hope it has been helpful for some people. I don't know. But yes, there's definitely things that I've learned that it's always good to be able to pass on.
But believe me, Tony, some really interesting lessons you've a learned and b eloquently brought to life with some of your examples. So thank you so much. And also the last thing I'm left with is a sense in you that although you're better at this skill than you were 6 or 7 years ago, you're really clear that we're all just on a journey, and that applies to you as much as anyone else, in spite of the fact that the numbers really are showing that you're more successful and skillful than you used to be. So I love that humble attitude to carry on learning. That comes across really clearly. And thank you so much for making time to share those ideas. I look forward to catching up at another time soon and hear the latest installment of how you're getting on in your new role. But until that time, Tony Gaston, thank you so much for appearing on the podcast.
Oh, thank you, Rob, and thank you for thinking of me, and thank you for having me.
No worries. So there's wonderful content, Tony. Really, don't have fear whether it's useful or not. It's really good. My last observation is I planned it to be half an hour, but it's such gold you were saying. I just kept running and allowing you to tell story after story. I might end up putting it out as 2 half-hour episodes, not one 1-hour episode, because of the length of commute time. And for that reason, I might just record now. If I end up cutting it, could we just now record like a the hello, here we are again, Tony, for the second half bit, if you see what I mean.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yep.
I have to make sure it doesn't sound phony when we actually edit it. But in case this would be the better way of doing it and have it make sense.
Okay.
Here we go. We're still recording, and so I'm going to welcome you back for the second half. Because I've still got some more questions.
Okay.
To ask, and here we go though. So, hello, Tony. Welcome back to the second half of this podcast interview. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, and thank you for having me back.
So, Tony, we planned to just do a short, sharp interview last time, but I realised half you were barely getting started, and there was a bunch more questions I wanted to pick your brains about. So in a moment I'll just jump back into those. But just before I do, how are things? How's the weather in Glasgow?
No, things are good here. Still gloomy and dreary as always. But yes, no, things are good.
Okay, great. So in that case, I'm going to jump back in from where we left off last time. Is that okay?
That's great. Yep.
Okay, so fingers crossed my editing guy can either say, no, that's going to be phony as hell, Rob. Just own up, you cut it in half, or it might be usable.
The only problem is that I said I was going to Uganda tomorrow and you didn't ask me how it was. But
because last time, yeah.
Well, anyway, I'll let you deal with it.
So, I mean, probably I'll just add a bit on saying, to suit people's commute times, I decided to cut the one end of injury into half, and that'll probably be the more authentic way of doing it. But I'll let you get away. Honestly, thank you so much for your time.
No problem.
Really, really helpful stuff. Equally, there might be little clips of it that could be used in video format, to promote the podcast or whatever. If I'm going to use it that way, I'll let you know. But
do let me know. I hadn't even thought about that, but yes, the camera has been running, so
we'll see. Apart from anything else, my heart's in my mouth. Was at this point, I'm so excited by the content, and I've got to see how good my tech was at recording it. But
yeah. I wasn't wearing my mascara or my blusher today, so there could be issues.
I can touch you up later. Best of luck with your trip. Stay in touch. And for now, thank you so much.
Thank you, Rob. All the best with everything. Okay.
Bye-bye.